afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Room for Discussion. Diversity is a word we've all heard countless of times, so much so that for many of us it had lost its meaning. We hear it in politics, in academia, and not in the least in company mission statements. But we have to ask ourselves, what does diversity actually mean? Why do we feel like its meaning has been diluted? And is diversity a means to an end or an end in and of itself?
Today, we welcome Anahit Galtsyan to our stage. She is the principal scientist and the leader of the genomics team at BASF, one of the largest chemical companies in the world. Her work lies at the intersection of genomics, biology, gene editing, merging with technology. In our conversation with her today, we're going to be touching upon the topic of diversity within research and STEM. I am Ece.
I'm Lina.
And we welcome Anahit Galtsyan to our stage.
Welcome to our couches, Anahit. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
So, today we're venturing into something which might be somewhat of unknown territory for a lot of us sitting here, because we're at the heart of the social sciences campus. So, you are a doctor of molecular genetics. Could you tell us, an unfamiliar audience, what your work entails?
And I think those are questions that you actually get for when you're defending your PhD, how you would explain your work in 2 words. I think basically it's like an investigator of understanding how the genes work. And in my case, I work with plants. So we want to understand how different genes are influencing different traits. For example, tomato color or the stature of the plants. And it's always like to go to the lab with the emotion of finding something new every day. That's a very big privilege and motivation for me.
Good. And you already gave us an example of a tomato, but if you could give us a couple of more examples in where we see genome editing in our day-to-day lives.
That's a very interesting and popular topic those days. I think genome editing is a very interesting technology, very powerful, but also we have to think how to use it in the right place, in the right way. And it comes also with the regulatory complications across the globe. But I think the science should be enabled and allowed to use to bring value to the society. And there are a lot of discussions. So I think hopefully one day we're free to use the tools that we can to enable the society and also build things to support the better life.
Okay.
And beyond your work, we also want to get to know you a little bit better. You have a long academic background, starting from Armenia, then to the US, and now in Europe. And are there any parts of Armenia that you bring within you when moving across the world?
Could you repeat your question, the last part?
Are there any parts of Armenia that you bring with you when you're moving across the world to different countries?
Yeah, I think it's always some things in my heart, definitely, because when moving from one place to another, you have only one suitcase to take things with. But even today I came up with something small, Armenian bag. But I think it's always keeping something, your language you speak, the places where you go, and your identity. But I think I've been privileged to work in different countries and in different places. So it's not only keeping my identity, but also enriching and uptaking all these different cultures and languages, the places that I've been. So I think I find myself very privileged.
You've worked in Germany a bit. Have you picked up anything German, your identity?
I'm working on my German.
Okay.
But also, I think the German society has very interesting things and very good ones. I think I'm much more punctual since I live in Germany, that's for sure.
That's nice to hear.
All right. We want to turn back to the work you do a little bit more. So specifically, as you're a leader of a genomics team at BASF, what kind of genetics research is your team currently focusing on, more specifically?
Mhm. So in our team, BASF Nunheims has a very broad portfolio of different kinds of crops, like tomato, cucumbers, onions, leek. Most probably, or most of the leek that you buy in supermarket, those varieties have been developed by BASF Nunheims. And my team supports multiple different crops, all come with their different complexities, genetics and genomic complexity. So we are early in the beginning of the discovery pipeline where we identify the function of the gene and understand how we can identify and create different variations to enhance the varieties, for instance, to have more tasty watermelons, or to have more resilient and resistant cultivars for particular disease in different climate conditions. But this is in the beginning, so we initiate together with pre-breeding teams and phytopathologists and bioinformaticians. We work with a lot of different functions. We are one of the puzzle pieces in the bigger puzzle to bring things together, and what ends up in the supermarket as a great variety.
Okay. And most agricultural inventions that come together with all of these puzzle pieces you talk about, such as genetically engineered crops or seeds, are patented, which means that the inventor has intellectual property over this crop or seed in question, and they have exclusive right to make, use, or sell the invention. So, do you think, from a research perspective, that this patent claiming system is good for innovation? Does it cultivate more innovation?
Well, I think I've been in both sides, right? I have been in academia for many years, but also recently, since the last 4 years in industry. You need to protect somehow your work. In academia, you do that by publications that has your name on it, and it's publicly accessible to everyone. But I think the patents are also important for protecting innovations in industry. And there are all different ways of interacting, and maybe this is not the place to go into the details, but it's not whatsoever with the means of inhibiting innovation, but protecting the intellectual property, in my opinion.
While they protect the intellectual property of these seeds, it has also been argued that a large agriculture companies' patents on these seeds, they undermine small farmers' autonomy and opportunity in the market due to the dependence on the patenting of these seeds. So higher costs and limited freedom to use these seeds occur. And this means that small-scale farmers cannot freely plant these seeds without paying the fee to these patent owners. And how do you think small farmers can adjust to this change? And how do you think this relates to innovation? Does it hinder it, or do you think there's a room for the farmers to adjust to this change?
I think the collaboration probably was one of the means, but innovation is also something that you have to invest to discover the knowledge and apply. So I think there should be also means to protect it. But I believe that collaboration in different levels between the industry can help a lot to facilitate that.
How do you think this collaboration would be possible? Do you think a small-scale collaboration starting with farmers and the company, or a bigger one throughout the industry?
Yeah, I think it depends on the context very much. You can, for example, the aim could be develop a variety that is particularly behaving well. For instance, I'm giving an example in drought conditions in particular regions, and there is a small farming company who can collaborate with a big one to create a project that they develop together a new variety. And I think this is a way how to do that. There I go. And there are multiple, in industry it's quite collaborative as well. From outside it's not only the patents and restrictions, but it's very collaborative. We do collaborate with many in academia, but also with different companies and small farming companies as well.
There's still some legal uncertainties when it comes to
Uh-huh.
these patents. Like, for example, if you have a independent farmer, or sorry, independent plant breeder trying to come up with the resilient crop, and they would have to go through all these patent applications that haven't yet been filed but might be filed in order to see if they're able to go through with this research. So do you think this is a threat to, again, innovation and research? That so much time has to be spent looking at patents?
It's a good question, and I'm not a patent specialist. So, but if in the same way that you have to spend your time to research in yeah, is it? It's, can you turn this off? Can you hear me? Yeah, better.
Yeah, that's it.
Can I remove this?
Remove it. Nice. Okay, sorry about that.
No, no worries. So I'm not a patent specialist, so I think those questions would be very appropriately addressed to IP specialists. But in my opinion, in the same way that you have to do research to develop something, you have to read papers, and you have to build your body of evidence, and you have to build everything from starting, understanding what you have. And that's a very similar strategy there. But I think for IP questions, it would be better to address to someone who has more expertise on.
And moving on to diversity in academia, we want to first talk about how everyone experiences diversity differently. So before we delve into the bigger issue, we want to get to know what diversity personally means to you, and how do you see the effects of having a diverse background shaping your day-to-day work within the research that you do?
That's a very nice question, actually. For me, being Armenian, sitting on a sofa in the University of Amsterdam, is quite already being embedded in diversity. But I think I have appreciated a lot being able to study and work in different countries, and that shaped me also the scientist that I am today, but also the person I am. And I think in science you have to have diversity embedded in your work. We connect things, and for connecting things you have to have a diverse way of thinking, and people coming from different backgrounds, cultures, languages, we see things differently, and it is a superpower. So if you bring all the superpowers together, it is at the edge of creativity and innovation. You have to have it. And I think it's an absolute privilege to have this kind of teams and work with them. For me, that's must to have as a scientist if I have the chance to build a team.
And specifically for you as a leader, what does it mean to have a diverse team for you? So is it about the composition of the team, or does it require something more?
The diversity can be different, like it depends what you understand the diversity. We can be from different countries, speaking different languages, or even coming from the same city but had lived in different distinct districts but walked a very different path. So I think for high functional and motivated teams, we need space for psychological safety and inclusion, so everybody feels included and they can use their superpowers to together build something that does not exist yet.
And as a leader, how do you ensure that diverse voices are heard and valued, not just represented in your teams?
I think all the differences should be approached with curiosity and open-mindedness and respect and empathy.
And what does that mean?
To listen, not to judge, and also see the strengths of different people and bring them together in a way that they are partnering, bringing the best out of them. Because in the end of the day, if we feel included, we want to show up to our workplace with the best version of ourselves. And I think that's the magic when the teams are shaped in this way.
And how do you define success in your team? When do you think you've reached diversity?
I think for me, the success would be when everyone in the team feels included and has the space to be themselves, can speak up even in disagreement in a respectful way. But also I think the biggest success is to see those teams functioning not only when they meet the goal, but also in difficult times, because this is where the team spirit really shows up to hold things together in difficult moments. And this is only, I think that it can be done when people feel themselves included in the place, but also have the feeling of belonging. And that belonging comes with feeling of inclusion.
But it must be hard to know if people do feel included. How do you determine that?
I think it's very obvious when people are happy in a certain space. It's that should not be difficult to visualize a happy person.
And as you mentioned, you observe these different team dynamics within your career, and as you have also a long history in academia, you have probably seen that not everyone has the same experiences. A prominent example would be that white men are significantly overrepresented in the STEM field and in research. What do you see as the obstacles for people who do not fit into this white male model in academia face?
Thank you, Edja, for bringing this topic. It's an inherent discussion point for academia. And I've been in many different places, in different cultures, and I think it's a trend. In some places, there are actions already being taken to move forward in a different way, but definitely female representation in leadership positions in academia, in science, is quite significantly reduced. And this, we have to be, there are things that we can do it by ourselves also. For instance, to be a role model for the young girls, to go to the schools and to do outreach activities so they can see that the scientists can be also a different shape, different genders, different colors, and different way of thinking. I think this is very powerful, to seed the seeds of enthusiasm in the younger generations, but also to help them to, when those seeds are germinated, to help them to grow properly and bloom. And in a certain moment, I can bring you an example from my career. When I was doing the PhD, there were a lot of female and male students at that level. And yeah, I think there was no discussion of any disequilibrium at that moment. But further in my career, where I had my first child, being a postdoc in academia, it was a very hard struggle to combine both things. And I looked back to all the postdocs who had kids when I was a PhD. And unfortunately, most of them, they were out of academic science at that moment. And this is a very big signal. And that's only with the skin of female women, with being a mother, but there are all different ways. I think there are different ways of getting to same place and different paths. There should be room for inclusion and diversity of achieving things in different ways. Unfortunately, the academic merit system and success definition sometimes does not allow that.
Yeah, and the next point that we want to bring up is actually matching your experiences. And we see that nearly half of all doctoral degrees in Europe have been held by women. But when it comes to leadership positions, this number is decreased significantly. Why do you think women still remain underrepresented in these academic leadership roles, even though they earn the doctorates at such high rates?
It's a very complex topic. We can have like hours of discussion. There are also papers and publications associating real numbers in publications, grants, and also positions that they have been tenure track positions who were given over the time. And there are a lot of things. First is I think it's also for women, when there is a certain age, we have to take a decision to have a family or to continue, because that's the period of time when you would be getting to a tenure track position, and it's the most high productive period where you had to. And there are a lot of examples that people can do, but it's not an easy way, because it's like climbing a bicycle when everybody is going with a very light city bike, and you are climbing the same mountain with a cargo. So the floor is not even for everyone, and the equity comes in providing space and time for everyone to be able to play the game with the fair rules.
Okay. And we also see a lack of diversity in how women's work is valued. So, for example, when women enter specific fields, there is a trend that the pay and the prestige of the field in question declines. This is a trend called occupational feminization. And in your view, what kind of challenges does this pose to the pursuit of diversity?
Could you explain again the first part of your question?
So when a field goes from being male-dominated to being female-dominated, and the trend switches, there has been data recording that also the pay and the prestige of the same field tends to drop.
I'm not aware of any documentation to that,
Well,
but I would be happy to see the data related to that.
I will show you. But if we go with this being true, what do you think this says about the pursuit of diversity if we don't value women's work?
I think by ourselves we have to create a culture of respect and recognition around us also. That's extremely important. We don't have to wait for the others to qualify what we do. In the same way, when we are in a position of power or not, we can also help and amplify voices around us. I'm not aware of that particular statement and the data behind it, but I think for us, as a woman, if I like to do the work that I'm doing and I feel like I'm doing it well, I just enjoy what I'm doing, and I think we have to enjoy the whole process. There will be a lot of different kinds of qualifications, but also in science, there are a lot of times there is a rejection, there is a no, there will be a lot of no-sayers, but it's developing the character of resilience also. It's and in having a career in science, being a woman or a man, it's all about it, to develop resilience.
Did you ever, when you got one of these no's, did you ever feel like it was because of your background, or do you think for your case it was just an unlucky instance or not a match?
I think when you're in this kind of situation, it's fine to be upset, and you should allow yourself to upset, but then you step back and ask yourself a question, what I can do better for the next time. If they close the door, there should be a window to get in. And if it's a room without windows, maybe you don't want to be there.
And having done research in countries all around the world, you have probably been in environments with people from all around. And in your experience, how can different perspectives within a research team expand its capacity to solve problems and find knowledge gaps?
If I understand the question is building teams that collaborate together.
Do you think that if a team is more diverse, it's more prone to find innovation and knowledge gap because of these different perspectives coming together?
I truly believe that. There are the bodies of study that diverse teams are much more innovative and creative. Imagine that you are in a building with a lot of apartments. The apartments are different, have windows, and the windows, they see different scenes. depending on which apartment you are and the color of the glasses of your window, you will see one thing or the other. So combining all the inhabitants of that building, you will have a beautiful picture that maybe one would not see from a particular apartment.
Do you maybe have a story where this has happened to you?
I think it was during my PhD, actually. I think it was incredible. Like, I have been very, very lucky to work with great scientists, but also great leaders. And my PhD supervisor, Jaime Martinez, he's an amazing scientist. He contagious, like he can, you sit with him on the sofa, and then immediately he contagious all the enthusiasm that he has. And that's also the way that to learn how to do science, for watching how the others do, how they ask the questions, how they find the solutions. And for me, I was privileged to be in that space where there were multiple different people from different countries, but also different ways of thinking, and that shaped the scientist that I am today. And not being afraid of crazy ideas, just try it. Maybe it doesn't work, but after 99 times, if it works once, it lights the bulbs, and it's worth the struggle.
And these different perspectives that different people from different cultures bring, have that and any cross-cultural differences in communication led to any conflict or issues? Do you have any examples maybe that these differences could bring any sort of miscommunication or conflict within the team?
Absolutely. I think that the differences can be beautiful if they are blended and combined together. But to make them functional together, you have to build a communication language. And I'm not speaking languages as like English, Spanish, or any communication ways and ways of working, because the differences can be also separating. Mm-hmm. But to cross that Rubicon, we need to be respectful and approach each other's differences with curiosity and respect, and develop a way of working together, and beyond all communication, not to assume things, kindly ask. And if this communication barrier is gone, then the magic starts happening after that.
And were there any instances where this communication barrier couldn't be gone through, and this diversity initiative or a diverse team was met with resistance, or was a team and maybe dissolved or had any issues because of that?
I don't recall a specific case in my mind today, but you can imagine, for example, in some cultures saying no, it's not very accepted. You would never say no. Or being respectful, not to disagree with your manager or a boss. To break this kind of course it comes with the respect and the cultural heritage that you carry, but someone that has the legacy of building a team has to recognize all those small things and create a space where they can also express themselves in a way that helps to interact in the most optimal way and show their colors beyond the cultural curtains.
All right. And now is ample time for us to open up to audience questions. So have a moment, have a think, and raise your hand, and then someone will come to you with a microphone. I have one question here up in the front.
Okay. I have a question that zooms out a little from the room without windows to the impact this company has in other rooms, including how it lobbies. So freedom of information requests show that lobby groups such as Euroseeds and Crop Life Europe, among which is membered BASF, frequently lobbied for genetic modified crop deregulation. In France, this manifested in the Duplom law, which briefly reauthorized toxic pesticides, such as acetamiprid, which this company produces, and weakened environmental regulations. These toxic pesticides have been linked to the promotion of breast cancer progression and infertility, among other conclusions that they have nicotine-like effects on children's brains. From your perspective, As a self-described investigator, how does having more female scientists or a more diverse leadership in a company like BASF influence how these risk assessments are done, especially for chemicals that may disproportionately harm women's health, children's development, or fertility?
Thank you for the question. There were a lot of information in that one. So BASF Nuenheims does not produce GMO varieties. It's all traditional breeding. So from my perspective, for what it constrains to my work, I'm not aware of the details of the statements that you have made. So I would reserve from the answering that part. I'm a plant biologist, not a chemist, so I would prefer not to step on the toes of subject that I'm not controlling. So, I think it is important in all scenarios and in situations to inform well, understand the topic well, and for me as a scientist and plant biologist, I think one of the responsibilities that we have is to come up to public and explain also what we do to break the lack of knowledge and assumptions that sometimes might be circulating around in the society related to specific topics. But thank you for the question.
Do you have any more questions? Okay, we have one there with the white sweater.
I wanted to ask you about the usage of AI in your field, and because it's known to be bad for the environment, so if you do use it, is it because it outweighs if the benefit outweighs the damages?
If I understood the question is related to the usage of AI, and you also mentioned it's bad for the nature. Yeah. Could you elaborate a bit more?
Well, it's known to use a lot of water, for example, so I don't know if you guys would use AI to help.
I think it's one of the digital tools that they are developing, and I think it's everywhere. And for science, it's also an important engine for the moment for innovation. But I think the sustainability part of it, probably it has to be thought about. I'm not very much aware of the water use. I will take it as a chance to instruct myself. Thank you.
And do one more audience question. Up here in the front.
Hi, so I was wondering, since you have moved from academia into the corporate spaces, if you think that it's easier or more difficult to create change in academia when it comes to diversity?
I think the change in academia will take quite a bit time. There are tendencies in many universities that diversity and inclusion is part of the agenda and the hiring, but also promotions. But it's still, I see a very long way to go, and it's much more systemic than just the hiring. I think it's the success metrics that defines the system. I think we all can do something, even being in industry. We do great science, and for us, we can also create equal teams in our workplaces. That's a place to start.
All right. Now, thank you for your questions. There might be time for some more questions at the end. We're going to continue.
So we want to continue with the work that you do. You moved from academia to the corporate world as a leader of genomics research team at BASF. And as we mentioned, that science has been historically a white male-dominated field, and only recently, diversity has been a top priority for many companies. However, the barrier to entry often appears earlier, for instance, through unequal access to the education of STEM and mentorship or any research experiences. What do you see as the main obstacles preventing diverse candidates from getting into the hiring pool to begin with?
Does the question refer to academia or in industry?
The question that I would refer to people that want to get into the STEM research in academia?
I think it's important that you develop a very good network and also find good mentors, because it's always good to see how the others are doing, walk the way. And it's also, for example, hiring. In the language, how we publish the job advertisements. There are studies what kind of candidates you can attract. Usually women are much more hesitant in applying for a particular job when they don't fulfill like 90-80% of the requirements. They are much more critical and less risk-taking. But men would probably apply to, they're much more open to take a risk.
Is that an issue of how these applications are written, or do you think it's more systemic?
I think the language, how the advertisements are made, could be more inviting and inclusive, that's for sure. But also in educating our girls in the STEM, but not only the girls, everyone else. I think we should help them, to teach them to advocate and be brave in taking risks. I think advancing implies taking a risk and have a safe space to fail. It's okay to fail, and all the biggest lessons you learn is from failures and mistakes, so they should be welcomed. They are gifts.
And aside from academia, how do you see that? How do you see obstacles preventing diverse candidates to get into the hiring pool on the corporate side?
I think I've been only 4 years in BASF, so for me, I think, like yes, we were talking about my workplace before the interview. You walk in the hallways of BASF Nunheims in R&D building, and it seems that you are in the United Nations. There are so many people represented from different places and different ages and different cultures. In my workplace, I have the feeling, and I also live it. It's very inclusive. What relates to academia, I think it depends on the access of the education. Not everybody has access to education outside of big spots like European Union or US. And also for people coming from disadvantaged backgrounds to the same place, it's not the same as someone who had access to education. So we have to acknowledge those.
And how do you think a company should deal with that in a hiring process?
I think we should hire the best person, qualified person for the job, that's beyond. But also looking at the candidate's path that worked. I think if it says a lot about the personality. If you have changed a lot of places, you walked around different cultures, you are expected to have certain level of resistance and resilience. Maybe also good adaptation. So I think it has to be seen all together. It cannot be separated from a picture.
And touching upon that, many companies declare strong commitments to diversity, but there's a growing cynicism among the general public about the genuineness of these efforts. BASF, like every multinational company, has a diversity statement where they highlight inclusion and equity. So are there any mechanisms in place that ensure that these commitments are translated into real life action as someone working from there? Do you see any commitments?
BASF is a very big company. I can tell you examples from my particular unit, the BASF Nunheims. In Nunheims, actually, with a very good friend of mine, Fatma Zaki, whose interview was also published. She's a brilliant scientist and inspiring female leader. She has initiated E for Empowerment. It's an initiative that we have in our BASF vegetable sites for empowering individuals to take decisions and advance their careers independent of their gender, orientation, background, religion. So And one of the things, one of the initiatives, it might sound very simple, but what we organized is an international lunch. So everybody that day brought their food, something typical from their home country. We spent 90 minutes together, talked about the food, get to know people that they are living, working in the other buildings that we would never even cross, and create these bridges within a small, the unit. And I think we have to do all these actions, leave them, and do them, and implement them, embed them in our daily life.
Aside from that, are there any policies that you've been aware of as a leader that you need to apply to your team to make it diverse?
Policies of?
From the company, the DEI policies specifically.
I think we have to look for the candidates that they apply usually for a job, take the best one, but also it's not always about the technical skills, it's also the personality, all the other things that you bring in. So I think it depends very much one person from the other.
And you personally, what kind of steps have you taken to make sure that these diversity statements are not just on paper but a concrete reality?
I think we have to watch for our own biases, because when you are in a leading position, you also carry your own baggage. So being aware of your own biases, it is a mandatory item if you are in a leading position. And leave it with your example.
And diversity is sometimes presented as a means to an end. So, for example, on BASF's website, it's claimed that diversity and different perspectives bring innovative ideas that are necessary to solve global challenges. But is diversity also important on its own, or is it merely a tool for innovation?
I think diversity is important for everything else. And one of the most visible manifestation is innovation, because innovation requires multiple perspectives. And when you combine all the diversity, you have a very vibrant and creative environment to work in, which fosters innovation per se. But we have to have it everywhere.
Okay. So it is innovation. Is diversity important for innovation, or is it more important for something else?
I can judge from my scientific perspective, it is crucial for innovation.
All right.
And BASF sets goals of increasing the proportion of women in leadership positions to 30% by 2030. Yet the latest figures show that women in leadership roles leave, and they're often replaced by men, making those targets harder to reach. Reflecting on your professional background, how do you think companies can ensure that this focus isn't just on getting women into leadership positions, but also creating conditions that allow them to stay in these positions?
I think it's important to have a strategy that is not top-down but from bottom-up. Cultivate the next generations of leaders and facilitate and create an equal ground for everyone. I think that's extremely important, but also having mentorship programs and role models to follow, it's extremely important.
And how do you think these conditions can be set for women specifically?
I think we have to have it for everyone. And if all of us, when we are aware that it's important to have equal opportunities, we will not be talking about female or male equality. Hopefully one day we don't have this discussion that means that we have crossed the border of having it as an issue. But I think we have to educate everyone. Also, our male peers could be the best advocates for us to help us to create environments that we can succeed.
And this target and it not being set for example, because of the set conditions that cannot be held. Do you think, thinking of these in mind, these targets are realistic, especially in the short term, or do they risk just being a PR exercise rather than innovating a structural change for women in leadership positions?
I think BASF is very big and the numbers can be very different in different countries, but judging, for example, from BASF Nunheim's, half of our leadership is female, and I think also it's very important to have these leadership programs for young generations of leaders, to cultivate them and prepare them for the next steps. And I think also for women, it's important to see that there are others in the same positions, that you can be there as well.
And for you as a woman in a leadership position, what do you think has helped you the most during this journey and for you to remain in this leadership position for a longer time?
I think being resilient and gain immunity when the things they do not work or the doors are closed, but also appreciate that there are also people who help you a lot. And so if you are helped, the best way of doing this, returning that gratitude, is to help someone else and bring someone else to equal level. And that's the most important thing. But I think it takes a lot of perseverance, a lot of patience and motivation to move forward. And fun. You should take some of the things with sense of humor, otherwise.
Okay, we had a couple more excited audience questions, so we're gonna do one more. If anyone still has something, right there in the black sweater.
Especially thank you for being here. But I wanted to ask a bit further a question you kind of already answered. BASF already operates globally, so I wanted to ask you how the meaning of diversity changes across different countries. Because you've worked in the US, you currently work in Germany, you're from Armenia yourself. Does the meaning of diversity itself change across different places?
That's a very good question, actually, because it also implies the cultural perception of diversity. In science, I think it's a very mixed, homogenized community. But it's true. For me, I think at least the places that I have worked, there's a consensus of perception of diversity. But I haven't been in all the places. I cannot judge for all.
And as the landscape of the business world and of academia changes, how do you expect the idea of diversity to develop with it over the next decade?
I think it's going to improve in the future, but we need really to foster and actively take even small actions, everyone in our area of responsibility or control, but also I think there are needs of strategies from the universities and also interesting policy in the long term, but not from bottom up.
Yeah. Do you have any suggestions?
For sure. For example, for being a mother and female in academia, I would have appreciated having a daycare in my workplace, for instance, or having the networking events or seminars not late at 4 o'clock, but in the morning when everybody had to pick up the kids, or more time to meet the publication requirements. Those are small things, and it is being changed. You see some of the programs, they have extensions for maternity leaves, and some places they also have kindergartens, but that's only for being a mother. There are all other ways that people can be included in the workplace.
And as our time is unfortunately coming to an end, we wanted to end the interview on a personal note. As someone who worked within the bounds of science and companies, throughout your career, if you could edit any DNA of any crop without any specific limits, what would you want to create?
I think i- tolerance, but also resilience. I think if you are resilient, you can go through all the difficulties, and you really need it for scientific career. But also tolerance to see the differences in a different shape, because all the diversity and differences are different colors. You have to be able to see a rainbow, not a monochromatic picture. And be curious and open and have fun. Most of the science is all about fun.
Yeah. And is there any crop that you would want to edit without any specific limits?
I think my kids would be happy to have a fluorescent flower to have it in the room as a night lamp. But yeah, just a joke. But I think, nowadays in agriculture and especially plant breeding, there are so many challenges, so many different things. I think I would not be able to pick a particular case, but I think that having climate change resilient crops that can help cultivate in many other places to bring food for developing world, I think that would be something interesting and very challenging to do.
Be interesting to see as well.
Well, thank you so much for joining us here today and answering all of our questions. It's been a pleasure. And if you can't get enough of room for discussion, currently we have our election series going. This is multiple interviews. They'll be conducted in Dutch up until the election on the 29th of October. So tomorrow we will host Rob Jetten on our stage here at 13 o'clock, at 1 o'clock. And then the day after we'll have Ines Kostic of the Partij van de Dieren.
And additionally, on Tuesday, 14th of October, we are hosting Peter Haskam, the chair of the European Fiscal Board and the director of the Central Plan Bureau. We will tackle the topics such as the EU finances, the microeconomics outlook to the Netherlands, and upcoming election program analysis. But for now, you're all welcome to REC Impact for roundtable discussions with the NHK. And to round this off, join us for giving a round of applause to Miss Anahit Galtsyan.